All right, perfect. Now you're on record. So just start off by saying your name, and we'll just discuss religious studies, why you study it, what fascinates you about it.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, my name is Aklilu, and it just happens that recently I have pushed my study from many other disciplinary areas towards religious concepts, ideas, thoughts, and issues. And that's where you find me, and your question arises in the context of you finding out that I am doing religious studies. But really, religious studies for me is a subset of a deep questioning, exploration of being and how it is, what it is, where we are, where we're headed, both individually, collectively, planetary wise, cosmically, and even maybe beyond the cosmos. And if you get that sort of sense, then the so called religious question is really the question of the totality. And if it is a totality, then it is philosophy, it is literature, it is science, it is neuroscience, uh, it's geography, it is psychology, uh, because of the horizon within which you put the question.
Yeah, that is so true, actually. And I think for me, what's so fascinating about it, when I looked at religious studies, what was fascinating for me, the very little I know about it, by the way, is just seeing where they overlap and where they're intertwined. I was talking about this off there because for me, what's so significant is the existential question about it. So I think for me,
Yes.
it's a purely selfish one. I don't really look at the stars, or I mean, I think nature as in terms of how it connects with human beings, yes, true. But for me, it is human centered in the sense
Yeah.
of like, why am I here? Like, what is my purpose here? Because I feel like to have no purpose means that my life almost becomes meaningless and I'm lost. But if I feel like there's something greater beyond myself, even those who might make nature their God, for example, there's still something bigger than yourself. That's what actually gives a human being the purpose to feel like, okay, I'm going to wake up every day and I'm going to put in the effort and work through the conflicts and suffering that life brings, and I'm going to make something of it, you know? And I think that human agency is significant.
Yes,
Yeah.
excellent, excellent. So from a certain again larger perspective, what you're saying, even though it you say it is personal, existential, as you said, and a quest for meaning, what this can be translated into a larger series of understandings by simply saying it's what you're asking is intensity of energy that is given shape and form. And
Yes.
see, now you quickly join up with the cosmic issue of, of how energies come together to do the kind of patternings
Mm.
that keep playing and unfolding for the emergence of you and I to do this asking, to back to those energetic fields that brought about our conversation.
Mm. That's true, but then if I think about it that way, I almost feel like I get lost, you know,
True,
because we zoom
true,
out so much.
true.
Which for me, I love the
Yes,
idea of
yes,
philosophy. I simply because of the fact I love having no answers to
true,
something,
true,
and you keep asking questions, it gets even deeper.
true.
So, but I feel like if I zoom out too much, I almost miss out on the human centered aspect that I was referring to because
Excellent point.
all of
Excellent.
this is beyond my control, you
Yes,
know.
yes. Excellent point. Excellent point. I think it is levels, uh, gradations
Yeah.
of continuously staying with a question
Mm.
to be able to you might say accommodate or assimilate, digest these questions
Yeah.
to in another language. Really, it is the levels of consciousness keep expanding, and in the higher or widened horizon, it's the same feeling as when it is a smaller horizon.
Mm.
So, in a kind of developmental sense, if a little bit what I was saying was cosmic consciousness, it's no different, really, in its quality being than ordinary consciousness. It has all the feelings and all the intensities and all of the whatever it is that you are feeling as unique individual conscious person. So it's a kind of modulation, an accordion. If
Wow.
so your consciousness can be widened to include the cosmos as you might say you,
Yeah.
to include the planet as you, to include the nation as you.
Mm.
Do you see? And
Yeah.
because we know what I and you means on the personal embodied level.
Mm.
So now the call, you might say, the kind of yearning is, could this embodied consciousness catch up
Mm.
and reach out to larger and larger horizons, not losing its intensity, not losing the meaning and the concern, the personalized sense that you're mentioning, but as intense as that, but in this heightened and widened way.
Mm. You know what's interesting? Oh, I forgot the name of this book. I wish I could remember it. It's like the holy and the profane, something like that.
Sacred and profane.
It's sacred and profane.
Eliade.
Yes, and I want to say it's in this book that he mentions something about human beings are always looking for this idea of a sublime experience.
Yes, yes.
And that's the reason why, even in the violent sense of like war,
Yes,
for
yes,
example,
yes.
it's like bombs going
Yes,
off
yes,
and stuff like
yes.
that. People need to feel like something is bigger than themselves.
Yes.
Hence why, the various religions in the past had worshipped
That's
nature and storms and
Yes,
things
yes.
like that. So I think there is this human need and desire to connect with something that's bigger than ourselves, but I think we're finding difficulty of like, how do we do that? Because it's so much bigger than ourselves, like we can't wrap our mind around it.
Yes, excellent point. Excellent point. And so it's, you might say, the seed of the cosmic consciousness of the larger consciousness is already in us, as you were saying,
Exactly.
in our reaching out to limit situations.
Yeah.
What you might call the liminal is something that we crave. So, in the evening when you go to 6th Street for, some drinks and some dancing and so on, what it is you want to widen the sense of you in the direction of a kind of to be beside yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
This is ecstaticness. Ecstasy is really being out of yourself in a way where you yourself push yourself to be out of yourself, which is to widen yourself, which is to the sublime is precisely a little bit of earlier what as you're mentioning is exactly the kind of place we love to be, but then we are scared because it could overwhelm us. And the highs that we get from the experiences are ones from which we have to sort of quickly get back to the normal, to the ordinary.
Yeah.
The question is, could it be possible to stay in the sublime, to stay in the high, to stay in the ecstatic, to stay with the cosmos, with the planetary, as if it were just ordinary, just as simple as you and I looking at each other and talking?
I think I think we as human beings have that desire to do it. I think various faiths help us center ourselves to be in that space. But what makes it difficult is, there's this great quote I was just sharing with a friend of mine. It's by E.E. Cummings,
Yes.
and he says that knowledge is something that everyone can acquire because it's something that's possessed, right? However, the feelings that we hold are things that possess us, and that's something that very few of us will understand. So I'm paraphrasing
Yes.
here, and that's actually, to go back to your idea of the cosmos. That's it, because you have to allow it to possess you, and we can't have control over it anymore. And we as human beings desire that security because we need safety as well.
Yes. There's this interplay.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a game.
Yeah.
And this is one reason why, ever since we were, conscious from being infants, How is it that we are not within the cosmos?
Mhm.
Well, it just the play is such that it has to be invited. You have to prepare yourself. You have to play around with a series of wider and wider horizons. From the crib you have to be in the room. From the room you have to go to the next, the house, and then outside. And did you see?
I know.
And there's a real sense in which that kind of game of limitedness and greater horizon, to the point of the unlimited, is part of what existence then is. And so now we're really back to the question about meaning and being.
Well, here's what makes it difficult, right? Because I think that there's another quote, and I'm paraphrasing
No,
this,
no.
where I can't think of the man's name, and I'll have to find the quote later. But he says something along the lines of like, it's not necessarily about traveling to new lands, but seeing with new eyes,
Yeah,
right? Because
excellent.
it is possible that I can see far more in a garden
Yes.
than somebody who has traveled
Yes.
10 different countries,
Yes.
because they weren't there,
Yes.
because they just traveled countries just for pictures and
Yes,
just
yes.
things like that. But if I really sit in a garden
Yes.
and I observed everything that's around me, I'm
Yeah,
having
yes.
a far deeper experience,
Yes.
and really truly connecting with the cosmos, the land, people, nature,
Yes.
more than somebody who's traveling
Yeah,
across 10 countries.
beautiful point. You're now bringing in the two dimensions.
Yeah,
Earlier, you asked me about the religious,
yeah.
and then I sort of morphed this question into the philosophical.
Mm.
But I think you're bringing back to the religious. The religious is very good with the practicing
Yeah.
and deepening and sustaining what the philosophical, which is ideas, thoughts, and images, and so on, cognition, pushing.
Mm.
But really, the lived, felt, embodied has to be practiced. Earlier, we were talking about being limited,
Yeah,
correct?
exactly.
So our eyes need to be, you might say, cleansed.
Yeah.
And the cleansing takes time, and it needs practice. This is the amazing dialectic or interplay that happens where it's right in front of you, but you can't see it. But nevertheless, you could see it if you would only squint or give it look at it in a certain way. And then if you practice more and more, it becomes, you might say, natural. Even though it is already natural.
I completely agree with that. Just there's this woman who I listen to. Her name is Tar Brock, and she talks about a lot of these Buddhist and Zen meditations. Yeah. And one of the quotes that she has is like, "I have no time to rush." And I think there's a beauty to that.
Beautiful.
Because like we live in a society that is so instant.
Yes.
Everything could just be given to you. That like I think we forget that certain things need to be sought towards, and sought after, and to choose to not seek after it, it really causes you a huge disadvantage, because things are given too quickly are not only not appreciated and not valued, but they tend to not last too long. Just imagine the amount of like videos one can scroll through over TikTok or these 30-second or 1 minute apps, because you're not really paying attention. But to really sit down across from somebody over a slow dinner, you gain far more than like a 1 minute video that's telling you about some random fact. And we miss that. So it is, I would agree with you 1000%. It is a practice we need to put ourselves in, of saying like, okay, I'm going to slow down and really be here and hear you intentionally, without any preconditions of saying like, this guy thinks he's better than me because he studies religious studies or whatever, whatever my ego feels like it needs to be. But to say like, all right, who is this human being across? Truly. And let me understand him for what he is, rather than what I'm picturing him to do. Because that I think allows us this fresh eyes.
It's all statements, as you were talking earlier, are always partial. And so even the video folks are aspiring, yearning. They are looking for that moment that could transform and allow them to get to it. And this is why they are rushing. And so I wanted to acknowledge, that gesture itself. It's just simply when you're doing it, you are not aware. Why am I doing this? Why am I rushing? What that sort of distance is to be practiced, to be available. And so no action is to be, in a sense, judged so much as to be looked at. You might say understood. And so any one of the statements we make are partial, given. So I agree with you about not rushing, and even the practice idea is one where when you're not practicing, it's better than practicing. Practicing itself can be dull and ritualistic and never get there. So this incredible paradox of you moving, yet something in you always knowing that moving could get in the way, and you might be not doing what you're doing. And so usually, given our existential notion, we are partial, but something in us, as it keeps growing, yearning to expand, to include all partialities, all polarities. Again, this is just words talking. The actual experience of it cannot be said as such, but it can be yearned for. And the practice gets us closer and closer to that. Nevertheless, it was always there. And still, it needed the practice. So that is the context in which I think of religion as one which gets the picture that, in fact, there is no need for a picture. This is the paradox, because the picture is a sense of separateness. Is you looking at it, whereas you and it have always coexisted.
I really like that, actually. And I think, to go off on what you're saying, I think this idea of the paradox that you talk about with the rituals and the practice, I want to just add on and say, I think it's really practicing with intention is what gives people this idea of fresh eyes.
Yes.
Krishnamurti, who I love his perspective. He asked a beautiful question. He has a interview with this man named Oliver Hunkin, and he says, do we look at anybody with fresh eyes? And it's a beautiful statement, because he says, let's say, for example, I hurt you, and I've said something very brutal to you. The next day you see me, you don't really see me as I am, because I could have changed, you could have changed. So much could have happened in between that time frame. But am I still looking at you as that person who said these vile things to me the day prior? Because maybe it's the fact that you begged for forgiveness, and you feel like you repented, and you can look at me with fresh eyes now. But until I can see you with fresh eyes, until I have this actual practice of it, then I still have this blockage. Then I'm not really seeing you as you are, and I'm not seeing you as you are in this present moment. And I think, as human beings, it becomes hard to see things with fresh eyes, because I also want to make sure I'm protected. Because if you, let's say, for example, you stab me the day prior, am I really going to come up to you and give you a warm embrace and hug you? Because I was like, man, my side's still hurt. Am I really going to do that? So there is this, I think, a wise discretion that we need to have. Yet at the same time, people who are too cautious see nothing. So there needs to also be some kind of brave action that's taken, where we move forward and say, okay, yes, this person has done this terrible deed to me. I still need to forgive and move forward, or else I'm still living in where I was 20 years ago. That's not a life worth living. So it's
we are at that horizon where language and words and and thinking and dialogue, for that matter, conversation, kind of start sort of how to say, dissolve.
Exactly.
And at which point, really, either silence or the next spontaneous happening awaits us, and to just pull it together. So the religious grounds the philosophical, the insights, the ideas, it embodies it. It makes it existential.
Yeah.
Yet we know
Join it. Join the conversation.
existential is one which needs to be widened. If it
Yeah.
were not widened, we would not have asked the question to bring us to meaning, limit, death, birth, all of these, which are questions of horizon. And so the interplay between philosophy and religion, and in many ways, then the practice allowing you to get these two together is you might say, the place where silence and let the next moment be comes. And I thank you for this conversation.
I thank you
And
as well,
thank you
sir.
for it.
Let me turn this off. I really appreciate this conversation. Like really, I mean,